of the Cremaster cycle, River of Fundament, and my most acclaimed exhibit, Dr. T and the Women. Hard Hat Harry real-life construction for kids is for kids, but it is also not for kids. We searched and searched our little beavers off for an option that said yes and no, but couldn't find one. In the aftermath, our fine team of working editors, whom we pay in dog coin, decided to hit the nuke button on most of our content in fear that the YouTube gods and would misunderstand our tomfoolery for something malicious. And so, gentle viewer, I now present to you the new and improved, but mostly identical video from before, back from the YouTube grave, Hard Hat Harry's real-life construction not for kids, with director commentary by me, Matthew Barney, Photogin.
Hello, I'm Matthew Barney, director of Cremaster 3, Drawing Restraint 7, and most recently, River of Fundament, starring Paul Giamatti. And today we're going to be talking about my life's greatest failure, the movie that I don't want you to see, but I'm going to let you see. And that movie is Giant Construction Equipment for Kids, featuring the legendary Anthony Mandel as Hard Hat Harry. Now, I have taken my name off this particular production. For reasons that will become increasingly apparent. Now, as you can see, Hard Hat Harry, as you will soon see, played by the legendary Anthony Mandel, is contained within a gin bottle, or, if you like, a gin's lamp. The gin's lamp, of course, contains the legendary Anthony Mandel, as I have said about a dozen times now. But I'm just trying to help all you poor people keep up with me out there. Now, of course, as I've said again and time again, this is Anthony Mandel, the award-winning actor who starred in, of course, the 2010 film Birds of a Feather, and its 2011 remake, Birds of a Feather. The lantern was an image I wanted to use, but unfortunately the producers and their fascist regime would not allow me to, citing that children would not understand its significance. And as you can see, Anthony Mandel changed clothes with the snap of a finger there. I'm going to stop referring to him as the actor's name, because the character's name is Hard Hat Harry. I had initially opted for the name Off-Talk, but the producers, again, insisted that using the names of the great old ones was not appropriate for children's programming. And, of course, you know, most household religions don't believe in the elder gods, and that's okay. Now, this boy here, I honestly forget what his name was, but that hat, that's actually my wife's hat, Bjork. Bjork and I were married when she was only 11 years old, and incidentally, she goes uncredited on this as the sound director and composer of the music, and she was only 9 when this was produced. I mean, only a few years later she would be singing the end credits song to the Hollywood sellout Death Machine, being John Malkovich. Again, them and their Stalinist regime stifling my work as an artist. Now, as you can see, Hard Hat Harry changed his clothes with the snap of a finger, and I really wanted him to be nude, but again, my ideas were shot down by very restrictive practices and procedures, and of course they threatened to call Child Protective Services on me, and for a while Bjork disappeared. But as you can see, the children's wish is to see all of the world's greatest construction equipment. Now, in my original screenplay, their wish was for social equality and political stability for all, worldwide. And I was going to display just how that just can't work, because even a djinn's power is limited. So we ended up using bulldozers to convey. See, yes, the triangular track, that's important. That's why I stopped. I don't remember much of filming this. Honestly, I was on a lot of mescaline at the time, and much of this is a blur to me. But that's okay. Now, see, he said a big bucket pooler. Again, the script called for the young child to say, "Fuck that shit, pull the shit, anal sadistic warrior," and then there was going to be a big musical number, and it was going to feature the music of Mick Jagger and of course Bjork, and we were trying to get George Harrison, but there was some sort of incident at the time with him in an airport, and he was just not available. So the musical number never came to fruition, and again, we were stuck with more bulldozers. I don't even know what the name of this machine is we're looking at, and I directed this. You know, I honestly, I don't know anything about real-life construction equipment. My screenplay was 800 pages long. It spanned several languages, including Shihonjin and Zhangyang, and Wanghu, but again, the producers did not want anything multicultural because, I'm sorry, I should address this. The vehicles are talking. Yes, the construction equipment can talk. Now that is something that originally bloomed in my screenplay. The idea was that cars would rise up against their drivers, and they would begin this rebellion. But, as I've said so many times before, producers told me no. Now that pool, originally that was going to be feces and urine, just mixed together to show that as the trucks drive through, we trudge through, filth itself, the filth that is life. And you see, as you can see, this machine is pleading for its life as it is being pulled up the crane. Originally, I envisioned a man, naked, hanging by his neck, struggling as the crane swings him from side to side, and there were going to be tarot cards falling from the sky, just endless tarot cards, and it was just going to be the Hanged Man card. But I think you know what I'm going to say by now, and that's that the producers would not allow it. I was given unlimited funds for this, and we ended up only using about $6,000. That, of course, is the voice of Anthony Mindell doing all the real-life construction equipment voices. Yes, he's talking too. The line was, "Oh dear, mother of Odin, what have I done? What have I done?" The child was then going to fall to his knees and look up to the sky and pray for death, but again, did not come to fruition. I simply wanted, there to be a scene where instead of construction equipment, someone simply plants a seed, and from that seed grows the Chrysler Building. And from the Chrysler Building grows a phallus. And from the phallus spits the water that is life. I will say this, some of the good that came of this otherworldly debacle that is real-life construction equipment for kids is that it did give me some ideas for my latest feature, my latest exhibit, if you like, River of Fundament, starring Paul Giamatti and Maggie Gyllenhaal. And not much else. I'm sorry, I drifted for a moment. Let's continue. drifting as dreamers like me often do. Now, as you can see, there's a pump on the left-hand corner, kind of a gurney supported by a series of fulcrums and wires. Originally, I wanted it to be a giant penis, constantly pounding the ground, but once again, the people at PBS were very adamant about, especially this scene. Oh, the first take of this scene was absolutely gorgeous, but you'll never see it, because I don't share my art with people who can't afford, annual tickets to the Guggenheim. That drill, all I can say is the first take. I was screamed at by the head of PBS. Fred Rogers was there, and he actually cursed at me. I didn't think it was possible. Oh, this is my favorite scene, I will admit. When the drill comes out of the hole, it spins, and it will... There we are. Beautiful. Originally, that was going to be, once again, envisioned with a phallus, and it was going to go in and out like that. That is my editing right there. But no. I'm sorry, I believe I was talking about my latest exhibit, River of Fundament, a moment ago. Yes, some of this footage, some B-roll, things that didn't quite make it into this cut, were later remastered and spliced into television screens in the background of select scenes in River of Fundament, playing now at the Guggenheim, but only if you can afford it. The clam digger, yes. I learned a little bit about hard hat life as a blue-collar worker in 1990s America. And it was a strange time, because I don't know if it's just me or the whole world that shares this kind of universal consciousness that we are all in the same clam digger bucket. And in the end, the stretching bucket puts us all on the same boat. But that's okay. Max, the character of Max, let's talk about him for a minute. He was actually Bjork's ex-husband. Remember I said Bjork was 9 years old when I met her. So she had already been married to Max for 7 years. And suffice it to say, it didn't work out, but it is good because then my child bride came to me. So in the end, these kind of things just come to you. And that's okay. I do remember this crane. It was rather intimidating. You see, I, like Freud, envision anything I see as a phallus. It doesn't even have to be in phallic resemblance. But as you can see, I was quite uncomfortable at the time. But now I'm not. In fact, I feel comforted. Looking back, I will say that despite this being my life's utmost failure, the one thing that if I could go back in time and change, I would. But now, I'm angry, and I'm still angry. I was angry then, and I still am, but I'm not as angry, and that's okay. This song, as you're hearing, it sounds like a country song sung by a 40-year-old man, but this is actually Bjork. She was only 9 years old when she sang this, and I think her ability to not only get over her Icelandic accent, but to mimic the voice of a 40-year-old country singer is phenomenal. And even though we're not together anymore, I still respect Bjork as an artist. And that's why I kidnapped the child we had together. And that is why she's pursuing me with lawyers and police and paramilitary groups. But that's okay. Now, I wrote the lyrics to this. That's something many people don't know about me, is I'm a songwriter. But as you may or may not be able to tell, the lyrics are a bit jumbled. And that's because they were translated. I initially wrote them in Klingon. And there is no Klingon word for happy or hooray. So the PBS people just kind of made it up as they went along. And aside from the tune and many of the vocal arrangements, little of my song's message is in there. Before we talk about the song again, I do want to address this bucket. It was rusty, and Bjork accidentally, I'm not sure what she was doing. I wasn't keeping an eye on her like I was supposed to. But she got some sort of cut on the side of this rusty thing, and we actually had to rush over to the local Pennsylvania County Hospital to get her an emergency tetanus shot. And while I was there, of course, I carried a camera with me everywhere I go, as I do, because I'm an artist. And I visited the syphilis ward. And, oh, what lucky day. They were so overcrowded, and they had to put the burn ward people with the people in the syphilis ward. And I there with my camera, and them in their beds. I filmed all of them without any consent because they were so heavily medicated. I envied them. I really did. People say that burns are the most brutal of all wounds. I say that they are the most beautiful. And there was this one patient in particular who I'm only going to refer to as CM, who had burns and syphilis. And he became the star of my next film after this. But I'm not even going to tell you the title of that movie, because you'll never see it anyway, because you're a simpleton who watches PBS. And that's okay. The dump truck. As you can see, it's filled with a sort of yellow substance. That's not dirt. That's freeze-dried feces. That was really important to me, and this was the one thing I won against PBS, because I said, listen, I know you guys are trying to, you have a false sense of superiority over me, even though I'm clearly better than you. But no one's ever going to be able to tell the difference between freeze-dried feces and actual earth. And they said fine, and they had to bring in a few lawyers, and I signed about 18 contracts that gave consent. I gave consent. They gave consent to collect feces from the local treatment plant, and they were freeze-dried, and they were brought in on this beautiful dump truck. And I had filmed a scene featuring Anthony Mindell being buried alive in the feces. And he really, he and I really thought the scene worked. It was going to initially, we originally had planned that to be the end of the movie. And the end of the movie was going to feature the violent death of But once again, that's the kind of thing that when you're working with the mainstream, you're not allowed to flex your creative muscles. There's no room to breathe in creativity. But that's okay, because I know that lesser people like you enjoy public access television and private access television. You like your HBO, your Showtime, and your Cinemax. You like your mindless explosions. I like my mindful explosions. Contained explosions. Much like one you'll see coming up here later in the film. I'm sorry. Excuse me, sound man, could I just get a hot Earl, please? I'm very thirsty.
Coming right up, Mr. Broadwick Lau.
That's actually Barney, Mr. Barney.
Barney, I love the purple dinosaur.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Much better. Oh, now this rock, this is actually a bit of a sad story. This rock resulted in the deaths of several pivotal cast members. So, from this point on in the film, and actually a few scenes earlier, if you look carefully, because we did not film this in chronological order, as I rarely do. But the children, Max and the other one with Bjork's hat, are actually little people. They're people. They're adults, but they're not of average human height. They're about 3 and 4 feet tall. See, right there, those are stand-ins. Now, the fact that we got such good stand-ins was really a send-down from the elders, and I'm very happy that we got 2 adult people who I could work with a lot easier without having to sign so many forms and contracts. And now my creative muscles had a lot more room to flex. But there are some scenes, as I said, that do feature, I don't want to say midgets, because that's not a nice word. But because you're probably, a person who works at a Burger King, I'm just going to say midgets. And you've never seen any of my movies. Because to you, the height of culture is Avengers Age of Ultron. But that's okay. Well, okay, see, that, again, remember I told you I had signed several consent forms to get human waste. That right there is human waste. And the smell was just gorgeous. I mean, in the hot early October sun when we filmed this. Oh wait, I'm sorry, is that snow on the ground? Oh, that's right, this was early February of 91. That line that you just heard, "Do you kids want to climb into my driver's seat?" we actually got into a lot of trouble with. Because at that point, like I said, none of this is chronological order, so it was a real mishmash production. It was just a mess. And the kids, I was, of course, the stand-in acting as the bulldozer. I was the voice of the bulldozer, who later would dub over with Anthony Mindell, the great Anthony Mindell. But we didn't have a permit. And I didn't know this because I have so much money in my bank account and you don't, that if you don't have a permit and you're filming on a live construction site, well, let's just say you get arrested and you are thrown in what they call the hole for 30 days. So it was during this 30 days that I had a lot of time to myself and my new cellmate to think about how we were going to proceed with real-life construction equipment for kids. Now, here's an interesting tidbit for all of you out there. Those planks, those slabs, they actually came from the Canadian White House. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, "Matthew, I'm so dumb and you're so smart. I work at Burger King and you're a millionaire. You were married to Bjork. You kidnapped your child and fled across the world. And now you're in an ongoing legal battle. And you're terrified. You're terrified that at any minute the paramilitary troops are going to burst in through the window from the helicopter you hear outside. The helicopter that may just be a helicopter, or it may be a black helicopter belonging to the United States government, and they're ready. They're ready for you, Matt." And to which I would say, well, dear viewer, you are dumb, and you do make a living selling greasy crap to children peddling plastic. And I would tell you, yes, there is a Canadian White House, I assure you. Once again, the dump truck filled with the human feces, which I later kept for my own consumption. I am a coprophesiac, copromaniac. Now that one, obviously, you can tell, is just regular earth in the back of that truck. That, actually that might be mulch, now that I think about it. I remember, there was a point, this was filmed over a period of, I want to say, almost 2 years. We began filming in October of 1989, and filming finally wrapped in 1991. And this was, I think, released in 92 or 93. And of course, I was very against it being released on home video. For those younger listening, you may or may not know this, but there was a time when movies, that is, the filth that you, your parents, and possibly even your grandparents watched, was produced on a cassette. Now, I know, you're a millennial. You were born in 1995. You don't even know what a cassette is. And if you were to approach me and I was holding one, you would say, "Is that a VHS player?" To which I would say, "No, it is not, you simpleton, you poor, poor simpleton. It is not a VHS player. It is what we call a VCR. That stands for Video Cassette Recorder." I drifted again, didn't I? That's okay. Now, I'm not sure at what point in the film we see the explosion. I'm sorry, Soundman, someone appears to have let an animal in here, and it's filthy. Okay, let's just continue, that's okay. Oh yes, this. See, I got into a lot of trouble for that right there. I don't usually raise my voice that loud, I apologize. But he said Disneyland Home Vacation, and that was a big no-no with PBS. But again, I pushed. I flexed my creative muscles, and I pushed. And I said, no, you let me have the feces, at least let me have Disneyland. And let me tell you, when you flex your creative muscles and you breathe art, you get what you want without having to raise your voice. And I apologize for raising my voice like that. I don't usually do that at all. I live in California and New York. I have 3 houses across both of those cities. I'm better than you. That is my mantra. I sit down every night and I pray to a non-denominational God. And I say, "Dear whatever God may exist or might not exist, thank you for making me so much better than all these other people. People like you, the people who are listening. I hate you, but that's okay." Oh, this movie really is my greatest failure. The dump truck is using an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice. I would never cast Arnold Schwarzenegger in anything. Oh, another song. Once again, this is Bjork singing. She was only 9 or 10 at the time. My beautiful child bride. At the age of 11, I implanted a baby inside of her. And now, I'm being pursued because I have kidnapped that baby and fled to the innermost regions of Asia. These were the days, even if this movie drained me creatively, spiritually, physically, and sexually. Again, these lyrics were written in Klingon, and the tune widely remains the same. But as you can see, it abruptly stopped because the next verse was completely about, well, a commoner like you would probably find it offensive. But I'm going to say it anyway. The next verse was entirely devoted to felching. The street cleaner. Once again, voiced, I believe, by either myself or Anthony Mandel, the great Anthony Mandel, award-winning actor, winner of several awards. Reduced to this. Reduced to Hard Hat Harry. As you can hear, the voices are not particularly creative. And I believe that the children's voices you're hearing are looped because after the rock incident, we now only had midgets to work with. I only say midgets because I know that my audience is so intellectually depraved that they can't understand anything higher than the Learning Channel. Shows like Little People, Big World. You simply point and laugh, saying, "Look at that, that's messed up." But I don't. I look at the midgets and I see beauty. I see a movie fully made by midgets. A movie casted entirely of midgets. Maybe it's a remake of The Godfather, just frame for frame, but with little people. Or maybe maybe it's not. Because you don't understand what I was going for. When I wanted to be a djinn, an ancient symbol, one that grants the innermost desires, things that come from the heart and the testicles. But because I live in a society, namely America, where the height of entertainment is a movie about robots that transform into cars and then transform into robots again, I have to limit my views, and I have to dumb myself down to your level, and that is why I hate all of you. Right now, I'm sitting in an extended stay hotel somewhere in an undisclosed city in Asia. I have locked my daughter in the closet where she belongs because she won't stop singing in Icelandic. I nod my head back and forth, and I wonder, what was I thinking marrying Bjork when she was only 9? But then I remember I'm Matthew Barney, and I did it because I'm an artist. And I have no regrets. And that blue crane edging over, once again, originally had it dressed as a giant penis. But the Stalinists at PBS said no. I believe they're building a dam. Now, because we had so much access to snow, I said, I'll offer to shovel all the neighborhood blocks if you let me use the snow and we put it behind the dam and we pretend that it's semen. Because obviously there's not enough semen in the world to fill a river, but plenty of snow in just the right amount does look like it. But I wasn't allowed. All I wanted to do was wash myself in it. But I can't. Because of BBS. Here we see a cement truck. I'm sorry I drifted because I don't remember working with any of these people. It's been so long. We started production over 25 years ago. And I do know that while this is the pilot for Hard Hat Harry, I did not want any more episodes to be produced. My work is a continuum. And within that continuum, there may be a sequel to a film. That is to say, you've seen Cremaster. Oh wait, no you haven't. You're poor. But if you had seen Cremaster, or any of the Cremaster films, you would know that not only were they filmed out of order, Cremaster 4 being the first ever made, and Cremaster 3 being the final one, with 1, 2, and 5 filmed in between them. Not in that order. See, your simple mind, your Cro-Magnon mind, cannot comprehend the glory of my vision. And my vision here was a single self-contained film featuring a djinn coming out of a thermos, showing 2 gender-fluid children about the world and how horrible it is and how filled with filth and semen it is. And somehow that vision got twisted into a story about a genie. A genie who came out of a bottle, a thermos, that's fine. And he teaches children about building things. Now, I'm not saying that construction workers are bad people. The world needs ditch diggers. That's why we have people like you, listener. You're out there right now, probably listening to this on your iPhone or your Android, and you're saying, who is this man? This remarkably well-spoken, probably very handsome man with a 3-foot beard. He looks like Alan Moore, but if Alan Moore showered. And you're saying, who is he? And why is he telling me that he's better than me? Well, I'll tell you, as I think I have before. I'm better than you. And that's okay. Like I said, the world needs ditch diggers. I need people to make the gourmet coffee I drink every morning. That's people like, your boss's boss. Now you are on such a level so incomparably low to me that I cannot even begin to illustrate, either verbally or pictorially, how unimportant you are. You are the filth of the earth, and I am the highest form of life there is. I am Matthew Barney. That's a jackhammer you're seeing. Cut through the rocks. I initially wanted there to be an ancient Indian burial ground that they were digging up, and then that the souls of the massacred Native Americans would rise from the grave and take vengeance on their opaque oppressors. And PBS did actually express some interest in this idea, and it later became an animated special that I had nothing to do with about the first Thanksgiving. I don't celebrate Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving is an American holiday. I am not an American. I'm Matthew Barney. At this point, we were so deep into the winter, we couldn't feel our feet. That man's feet are wrapped in 2 layers of socks with paper bags airtight directly around them. But no matter what we did, the ice kept getting in, and I kept hearing the knock at the door every night on my cabin, and I heard the voice saying, "Fatagan, Fatagan, let us in, we hunger." But then other voices came out of the darkness, knocking on my cabin door, and they said, "Please, Matthew, please let us in. We're hungry, we're cold, we haven't used a bathroom in 3 days." And I said, "Filthy commoners, look not upon me, look upon yourselves, and know me, know that I am better than you. I am the supreme life form, Matthew Barney, husband of Bjork." Here we see the explosion I mentioned much earlier in the film. Now, I've talked about phalluses, or phalluses, a lot, thus far. But one thing I hadn't mentioned in my screenplay until about the 450-page mark was the glorious female reproductive system. And that's what this explosion was going to represent before they decided to turn into something about dynamite. What I was going to show, as you'll see coming up here, well, you can imagine what that is. But what I was going to show was an orgasming vagina vibrating in slow motion, extreme close-up, very tasteful. Coarse hair covering its pubis, vibrating, pulsating, forever. And there was going to be female ejaculate everywhere, covering the screen, dripping down the glorious cinema, the silver cinema. And it would be right here. And then, nothingness, forever. But, because he's a djinn, he can reverse time, and we would see it again in its full 35-minute glorious sequence, but in reverse, showing that just as pleasure gives, pleasure takes away. I had so many 55 gallons of lubricant ready. Precious dollars of mine wasted by public access television. Simps who don't understand art, who don't understand that my heart bleeds, that I am Matthew Barney, King of Kings, and I produce the greatest art anyone has ever seen. I make Leonardo da Vinci's art look like a coloring book. And I know that I'm great, which is why I'm so humble. And as we come into the what would be horrifying and beautiful climax of the film, we see a little bit of my influence. The lime on the ground. Well, you heard him. He knows what he's talking about, and that's okay. But it's not okay with me, because I haven't watched this movie since its premiere on Channel 12 in 1992. And I'm getting angrier and angrier every millisecond I watch it. Guys, I'm a man of science. I'm a realist, but I'm also an artist. I bleed creativity, and I give it to you. And all I want is for every playhouse in New York to say, here plays a Matthew Barney exhibit, and outside commoners like you, dressed in your little trilby hats, and your worn coats, and your broken shoes, will chant, huzzah, huzzah, Matthew Barney, we love you, we know who you are, you're better than Bjork, you're better than all of them, because you're Matthew Barney. Oh, the steamroller. Of course, we couldn't get an actual steamroller. We had to use one of these. Again, I don't know who drives these things. They're the help. That's what they're there for. I don't have to call them by name. Again, another reference we got in trouble for when the child said Star Wars. That was why when I killed him, when we had the unfortunate rock accident, they were recast with little people, midgets, for people who like to delineate the character of those unfortunate enough to be born shorter than you, but with a mind far vaster. Now, the Dracula voice at this machine, or I'm not entirely sure what I'm looking at. Once again, I don't remember much of the actual filming process of real-life giant construction equipment for kids featuring Hard Hat Harry. But I do know that that machine was initially, and for lack of a better euphemism, decked out to look like the lawnmower from the infamous masterpiece Caligula, a film that I actually enjoy. Now, that voice that one truck is using is, I believe, demeaning to those with mental impairments, or even certain physical impairments. Say the tip of your tongue was cut off in the making of one of my films, and you can't talk right. That's why you sound like that, because you gave the tip of your tongue to art, because you gave the tip of your tongue to Matthew Barney. And now it sits in a small jar of formaldehyde in a drawer by his bed that he sleeps by every night. See, this, I don't even know what this is. I don't know anything about real-life construction equipment, let alone giant real-life construction equipment. I wanted to make a movie that showed the consequences of using gin. Now, at this point in my screenplay, the children had aged about 60 years, because, as we all know, using magic causes you to age quickly. And doing a deal with a djinn is never a good idea, unless you know what you're doing, like me, Matthew Barney. So, they replaced the entirety of my idea at this point with, let's go to the side of the highway and watch the help fix it. And that's okay. That's fine. But I would like to quote an old proverb from the great European artist Tupac. And Tupac, or as he is better known in some circles, Biggie Smalls, said, "Gardening ain't nothing but sticks and hoes." And to that I say, roadwork ain't nothing but trucks and tows. And I think my point gets across just fine when I say that. Because as Mr. Ice Cube later would go on to say, moments before he disappeared on the Malaysian airplane, "Oh God, what have I done?" Which is exactly what I said when I filmed this movie. See, that, I don't even know what I'm looking at. As you can tell, or may not be able to tell because of your simple one-track mind, you probably have several tabs open right now on your computer as you're watching this. And you're probably watching the trailer for, I don't know, the Ben Affleck version of Batman. And that's okay. But But you know what? No, it's not okay. It's not okay that you don't recognize me as an artist. I put on exhibits at the Guggenheim and all over this great country, or should I say once great country. Once great because now it is populated by people like you. I get grants from universities worldwide who beg me to make a film. Not a film, an exhibit. Not an exhibit, an experience. And they say, "Oh, Matthew Barney, who art in New York, please make our movie. Please, we give you full creative control, unlike the people who tried to control you. The people who promised you money and fame. But then when you were done with this, you realized, I already have all that. I'm Matthew Barney. Live the dream." And that's what I'm doing now, by recording this audio commentary for you simpletons. I'm putting it up on the internet, the lowest form of all communication, for you to see for free. Once again, the trucks are speaking in a manner demeaning to those who may live outside the Brooklyn area. And that's not okay. In fact, I'm starting to rethink my life as I watch this film for the first time in over 25 years, in over a quarter of a century, if you will. And I'm starting to think that a lot of this is just not okay. We need to address the fact that these trucks are racist. And that's not okay. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What that truck just said, that's not right. You shouldn't have to hear that kind of thing, unless it's in one of my movies. But in the right context, of course, which it is not here. I don't even have words for that. See, the child, who I believe at this point had survived the initial rock attack incident, one of them did at first, and that was tragically, that quickly came to an end when that bus that you see go by there in the background later, well, they found the boy stuck to the grill of the bus about 17 miles uptown. And that was when a second midget was brought in. And this midget was difficult to work with. His name was Frank. And he insisted upon wearing a jester's hat. So we came to a compromise. And that's where Bjork's hat came in. Now, of course, I know what you're asking. You're asking, well, wait, at the beginning of the movie, the boy already had the hat that you said was Bjork's. To which I say, you simple-minded peon, you don't understand the slightest of how reality works and how I can manipulate it with my otherworldly powers I have gained from the ancient old ones. I am Matthew Barney. I am the Knight. And, of course, as you can see, some of this footage later made it into movies like De Lima La Mana, and even to a lesser extent, Districted. That right there was the initial opening sequence for Districted, but it was later moved, and you can see it in the movie if you watch close enough, and if you're, of course, rich enough. Not rich, that's a bad word. If you're fortunate enough to be able to afford a copy of this film reel. Not this film reel, of course. This is, as you may or may not be able to tell, taken off of a video cassette. Now, that to me looks like a swastika, and initially this scene was going to be the Nazis invading from the moon, an idea that was later put into a far lesser film. My ideas get passed around Hollywood like STDs. But that's okay. Actually, I'm okay with that one. That one is okay. Because, you know, if you can't share STDs, what can you share? You can share love, and you can share STDs, and that's okay. Now, obviously, this footage here I did not film. That's from some sort of 1970s educational video, that just the one scene of the truck going by, you could probably tell, even to an untrained eye like yours, that it was from poorly done, maybe 16mm camera. Now, of course, I wanted to film this on 70mm, and I could have afforded it, but they, that is, the producers, said, "Matthew, this is going to be airing on television. TVs have a 4:3 aspect ratio, or they did when this was made." And I said, "Alright, well, in your infinite wisdom," I was being facetious, of course, but I said, "In your infinite wisdom, what would you recommend?" And they said, "Just a regular video camera." I will admit this about this film, is that it does not follow a linear path, much the way I initially envisioned. I didn't want you to have to watch this movie in any particular order. I didn't want you to have to come in at the very beginning and then sit all the way to the end just to know what was going on. This isn't that kind of plot. You can watch any scene in this movie in any order you like, and it still makes the same sense, even this version. And in that sense, I am proud of Hard Hat Harry Presents Giant Real-Life Construction Equipment to Kids. That, of course, is now the famous, but also now destroyed, Overture Highway in New Orleans. You know, a lot of people drowned in New Orleans, but I didn't.
You saw crawler cranes like this one earlier today. At the top, it has a 40-foot boom extension called the jib, and there's another...
See, the jib, that was another name we experimented with Harry before we settled on Chicago. But we couldn't use the word jib because, as it turns out, that's actually a racial slur for the natives of Antarctica. Now, of course, as, again, you're not an educated person listening to this. Like I said, you work at Burger King and you sell people greasy, recycled food for a living. And that's okay. But as I was trying to portray a world without prejudice, a world without barriers, using the word jib, which, from my understanding, my textbook definition of jib is, it means wicked wish. And that was why Tokach, his initial name, was the jib. But, as it turns out, that word, taken out of context, is in fact a racial slur for the natives of Antarctica, who went extinct many hundreds of years ago due to the army bases there that wiped them all out and replaced them with penguins. So, the jib became and became Hard Hat Harry. Excuse me, I don't usually raise my voice. I mean, sometimes you do when you have to say the initial name of Hard Hat Harry. I know not all of you appreciate Star Trek the way I do. In fact, I don't even like Star Trek, I just like the Klingon language. That's really the only thing I admire about the entirety of the show's almost 50-year run now. I think Gene Roddenberry was a hack, and that I am a better human being than him and 90% of every other human being who has ever lived. There's the ice over Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or wherever we were this day. It was somewhere in Pennsylvania. Soundman, I can't hear the movie. Oh, I'm sorry. There it is. Sometimes I space out because when I remember filming this, there was constant background noise. It was just the sound of a microphone muffled up next to a vagina. And it was a woman walking all day with without a tampon and instead a microphone in there. And the sound was unlike anything you've ever heard. And a little bit of it is somewhere in the movie, but I couldn't point it out to you because the people at the public access station decided to cut it out for obscenity. Now, being an artist, I don't believe in obscenity. I believe there is only art. And that is why this scene was going to involve the violent death of this construction worker. And we filmed it, and we actually killed the man. He didn't have to sign any papers, because when we asked him, "Are you willing to die for Matthew Barney?" he said, no, dear God, no, help me, no. And then the axe came crashing down, breaking through the hard hat. And I said, not such a hard hat. Is it, Harry? Is it? As the blood splattered warmly across my face, I said, I am an artist. I am Matthew Barney. And I am better than you. And that's okay. 282, that number appears in all my films. Even the ones that I don't have credit on. Like this one. That's not okay. If I could, I would pull a George Lucas. I would go back in time. Well, no, I wouldn't even have to go back in time. I would just have to simply load this film onto a computer and drop in some Ewoks or some fluffy computer animated sheep. And then they would dance around, and you could have a sock puppet fly in front of the camera for a few minutes and say something like, Misa give you this or that, and I would say, that's racist, because I'm an artist. I don't have a race. My skin color is transparent. And as the movie continues to fritter away, it chugs on and on. This was added padding. Really, it was just added padding at this point. PBS people said, we don't have commercials, so we need to fill an entire hour. And I said, that's okay. Wrangler Jeans insisted on being paid for the unusual amount of exposure they got in this film. The barrier mover, this I do remember. I don't, again, it took out 3 more of our extras, including 1 midget, well, 1.5. The lower half of 1 midget survived, the upper half did not. That's why, I turned his foreskin into a necklace, and it's what I'm wearing around my neck right now. The foreskin of a midget. Sometimes, before I go to bed at night, once I've locked Bjork's daughter firmly in the closet, I sniff the necklace, and I think, oh, what could have been? What could have been if only Hard Hat Harry had been in fact named Chakok! But no. But that's, the more I think about it, that's not okay. And I walked away from this disaster piece. I walked away from it worse. A worse human being. Because I had to work with people who made $7 an hour. I make so much money every day. And when I go home at night, or when I travel on my private jet, and I eat my caviar, I just sometimes take a couple $100 bills out of my wallet, and I wipe myself with them after defecating. And then I put them in my salad, and I cut them up, and I eat them. You know why? Because I can. Just one more. I have completely forgotten the climax of this film, but I think it involved an explosion. Oh, that's right. They made me change it. Well, here we are at the end of the film. Smithereens. Like my dreams at the end of this film. But thankfully, not long after this, I went on and I began filming what would later become known as the Cremaster cycle. And I began with episode 4 instead of episode 1 like I should have. And I said, no, it's okay. I'm going to film them out of order over a period of 10 years or so. And then people will have to figure out what order to watch them in. And then, halfway through that, I'm going to film a movie in Japan about Shintoism called Drawing Restraint. And then I'll do River of Fundament. But now, at the end of the day, enemies are dead, so is the cast. And that is why I fail. Now, like I said, Anthony Mindell. Ah, yes, Jason Marson. Ryan Hare is actually the name of the midget. Like I said, we don't remember the name of the small boy because he was tragically killed so early in production by the rock that was dropped by an unknown assailant from a bulldozer driven by someone who didn't know how to drive a bulldozer. Still photographer Joel Warren, he was a particularly difficult individual to work with. Gary Hare, of course, being Ryan Hare's dad, the midget's dad. I'm not sure why he needed to be there. And as we come to the end of what is arguably the worst film I have ever made, the only movie that I've had my name taken off of by choice, I say to you, why? Why? Now, coming up, oh, that's right, it was 93. Well, that was when it came out. If you have problems, call 1-800-258-8855. Just tell them what you think of real-life giant construction equipment for kids. Because I've told you, and I've already said a lot more than I wanted to say. Because I don't like talking to poor people like you. You make me sick. I hate all of you, and I just want you to get back down into the bowels and die. I'm Matthew Barney.